Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, chaps. What an episode we have in store today with none other than one of the best FPL managers of all time in Rich Clarke, paired with another incredible manager, but also the fixture and chip strategy king of FPL, the brilliant Ben Crellin, who, spoiler alert, has also got a bit of breaking news, which we will go through in a second. But firstly, Ben, how are you, and what colour was your arrow in Gameweek 25?
I'm doing okay. I'm a bit frantic after all the blanks and double game weeks and the FA Cup results and all that. But I got a red arrow this week, down from 5k to 6.5k. But my hits paid off, I think, because I took a hit for Salah and Alexander-Arnold, and they did pretty well. So I'm not too disappointed.
96 minus 12, red from about 5.5k to 6.5k, but you'll take that, Ben. This for you was probably just a week of preservation, I'm assuming, to use your chips later on down the line. So very well played. How have the last few weeks been for you? It's been a bit of a crazy week for you this week, hasn't it?
Yeah, in terms of FPL, I've been getting a few red arrows, but yeah, this last few days in terms of FA Cup results there were some big shocks, and they've kind of deflated the kind of chaos that we might see later on, making it more important to take advantage of the doubles and blanks in the near future.
I can't believe that the two things happened to mean that Spurs now have a game in 28. I don't know what the combined odds was of Southampton losing to Grimsby and then Spurs losing to Sheffield United as well, but that was not expected at all, was it?
You had that up in the 90s, didn't you? 90%.
It was about 3%, like 4% chance, and then with Leicester blanking as well, you get down to like 1%, less than 1% chance that all those Leicester get going out as well. So yeah, it was shocking what happened.
Rich, how are you? And what colour was your arrow in Game Week 25?
I'm well, yes. A good week in the end. Decided to, like Ben, to take a bunch of hits after some very patient play. Ben and I are having a right old ding dong in a couple of mini leagues, and I've just inched ahead of him, but he'll be back ahead of me by the end of next week. That's the way it's going. So, but it's good fun. 97, pretty good score.
It was
to get for a 3% green arrow. You have to work hard for a big green arrow these days. So delighted to have stuck around in the top 10k for as long as I have, but it's going to be a lot harder to do that unless I go with the herd, it seems. So that's what we're really going to get into this evening, hopefully.
Very well played, Rich. I scores 87, no hits, but the reason I took no hits was that I played my free hit. I had a bit of an epiphany on, I think it was Thursday night or Friday, but I think looking at your guys' teams compared to mine, I had to take a -8, and I couldn't even get to someone like Trent, for example. So I would have needed a pretty hefty hit of like a -12, basically destroying my team, taking a massive hit just to get any semblance of a team out. I also thought, and I think I texted you this, Rich, actually on Friday, I thought that Fulham would beat Leeds, so that meant that Liverpool wouldn't have a double in 28, and I didn't want Liverpool players from this game week on onwards. So I had some rationale for it. Obviously 87 is not the greatest score for the free hit, but we're going to be some really interesting chat today, because now my team compared to your two guys' teams are incredibly different, and of course the word wildcard has been bandied around all over social media all week like nobody's business. So it's going to be incredibly interesting to see the divergence of strategies as we move forward. So we've got the spaffometer up, though those who've been on previous episodes will know what the spaffometer is. It's something basically that Rich came up with, where we judge each one of our chips and whether we smashed it, whether it was a bit meh, or whether we spaffed it. And I played my free hit this week. Wildy in the chat says chip spaffing season in full swing. So I suppose in the defence of, I want to try and get it to a meh, rather than a double spaff so early. Part of the reason I did the free hit was not to try and get loads more points this season. It basically wasn't to destroy my team. and go into this period with a pretty decent shot. So if I hadn't have played my free hit, I would have scored net 78, and I would have had 3 Liverpool players, a couple of Everton players, and basically I would have had to wildcard. It would have been a hell of a mess. Whereas now my team is pretty decent. I've got Harry Kane, Bruno Fernandes, Luke Shaw, all this kind of stuff who lots of people have taken out. And so I think I'm in pretty decent shape for game week 26. So that's my very measly defence. Rich, can I ask you first? What do you think I've done?
I don't know what you think, Ben. What's the sort of expected return that you would look to gain on from the field from a free hit, mate? What would you say you'd be looking for from playing a free hit?
Well, I mean, a couple of weeks ago when it looked like we were going to get some big blanks and doubles later in the season, I was thinking free hit would be worth like 20 odd points. And the reason I didn't free hit last week was because I expected to have a lot of players with blanks in game week 28. And so I thought, like, I don't want to free hit now and then come back to a team that is, I don't have another free hit to use in 28, and I would have been in bad shape. So Fergie's got a bit lucky there with what's happening in the FA Cup results. A little bit.
I called the Fulham result. I would say that was part of I thought Fulham would beat Leeds. That was part of the decision in not going all in on Liverpool. I would say that I did, Ben. I called that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can. Yeah. I agree you've been lucky, but
a little bit. It's gone in your favor, basically, because the free hit is less valuable to everyone else now because of what's happened. So you not having a free hit is less of a problem for the rest of the season than it could have been.
That's right. Yeah, there's not so many stinker of a game week out there. For even game week 32 looks navigable. So I think that the free hit now can be used in a double game week. Almost definitely will for a lot of people. But I mean, a gain of 9, Fergie. We'll have to ask the chat what they think. I mean, my -8. I mean, I know Ben took a big -12, but I worked out that my -8 got me a net gain of 18. That's the hit included. So it was 26 less 8. So I would have scored 71 instead of a net 89. So if you'd have taken a couple of hits, bud, and gone with everybody else, I think.
However, Rich, I played a long game.
You still had a free hit.
I played a long game, and you know what my argument is now? I now don't have to wildcard in game week 26, whereas lots of people have to, and that is my big argument. Is I'm not looking at the game week score in isolation. Your teams now, in my eyes, are very, very poor, whereas my team is pretty good for game week 26. Ben is shaking his head, and he is not. He's not a happy Benny.
Yeah, I mean, the wild card would have been like beneficial waiting until game week 33 if the chaos had happened and we'd got the expected blanks and double game weeks. Your free hit is looking a lot better because of Spurs and Southampton both going out, because of Leicester going out. It's looking really good now that you've played it. You haven't gained much from it, but you're not going to lose as much from it, from not having it later in the season.
Yeah, his opportunity cost is not there. I think that's a really good point.
Okay, well, we'll leave it to the chat. Please vote spaffed or meh. I'm fully expecting a spaff.
One word.
Ben,
Spaffed
one word.
Meh.
Do you think I've spaffed the chip, or do you think it's just meh? Or do you think it's meh?
In hindsight, it's meh. It's looking good now, isn't it? But I don't know. I don't know what your team was like last week, so I think I probably wouldn't have done. But
what I'm more interested in is that the mental turmoil you put yourself through. I think you put a tweet out saying you went from a -4 to a -8 to a -12 to a wild card to a free hit all in the space of a couple of hours.
I did. It was crazy. It was everything, each and everything. I nearly wild carded, just try and get ahead. And I think Ben's right. I have been fortunate with the way it's panned out, but I do think the logic to free hitting was pretty sound, and I think I'm hoping to see the benefit kind of in the coming weeks. Anyway, let's move on before I try and defend the indefensible anymore. Ben, we've got the lay of the land. Thank you so much for joining us to run through us this. You also, I believe, before we move on, have some breaking news that you would like to share with the world.
Oh, I just got a little bit of info about Brighton Man United moving to game week 34. That was the question, how would these blanks be rescheduled? it could have gone to 34 or 37. But now that we know that it looks like Man United is going to 34, we can see that Brighton's other blank will move to 37, and that affects Man City's blanks as well. So it'll mean that Brighton Man City, assuming it's postponed in game week 32, will move to 37. Man United Chelsea, if that's postponed because of the FA Cup, that'll move to game week 37. And then what's the other one? Brighton, I think that's it covered. Man City West Ham.
Floater against Newcastle has got to go in somewhere, haven't they?
Yeah, and well? Man City West Ham, the other knock-on effect is Man City West Ham will be moving to game week 34 as well. So it looks like they're just putting all the game week 28 blanks into 34. That's what it appears, if they've already started organizing them, which means Liverpool would double in game week 34, and they wouldn't in 37, and Chelsea would double in 37 if Man United Chelsea is postponed, but not in 34. We've got the chart up, haven't we, at the minute? So you can see I've got the orange colours and the blue colours.
So from what you're saying there, does that mean that this chart is likely to maybe make 34 bigger over the next few weeks and 37 smaller?
Well,
would that be fair?
We've got so few games that need to be rescheduled. It's only 3 from 28 postponed and 2 from game week 32. We can almost guarantee that there will be 2 in game week 32. I mean, you're not going to have Burnley winning away at Man City and Grimsby winning away at Brighton, are we? I mean, we got some shocks last week, but that would be even more shocking. So, yeah, we'll get Brighton Man City postponed in 32, and one of Fulham against Leeds or Man United against Chelsea. And so those 2 blanks from 32 will go to 37, making it slightly smaller, because you'll get 3 in 34, 3 extra fixtures in 34, 2 extra fixtures in 37, and then 1 extra fixture in one of the little game weeks, little double game weeks, because of Brighton,
which is that Brighton Newcastle one that we could put anywhere, basically.
Yeah, but now I'd say that the odds are more that it will move to 30 or 31 now, if they're already starting to reschedule.
Well, that's quite key, isn't it? Because people who might be, wild carding in the next week or two, that's not far away, 30, 31. So that's an extra double for 2 popular teams, pretty soon.
You want your 3 Brighton players, obviously, on your wild card. And then it's like you keep Trippier probably. Yeah, I mean, if you've got value tied up, and then you'll want Trippier because he has fixtures in all the blank game weeks, and he has 2 double game weeks to come. The guaranteed one in 29, and then maybe the other one will be in 30 or 31. If not, it'll be 35, 36. But yeah, I mean, you could make an argument for starting with 2 Newcastle players in your wildcard team. Yeah, there's a bit of a conundrum with wildcarding, which is what I'm doing. It's like whether to start with Raya or Sanchez or Kepa, and yeah, it gets a bit tricky with like who you leave on your bench in game week 28 if you're wildcarding now. Mm-hmm. Like you want Rashford, you want Mitoma, you want McAllister. That's three players with blanks. Do you have a Brighton defender as well? That means you're only playing with 10 players in game week 28. So like or do you go with Sanchez as your goalkeeper? And that
saves
means
a spot, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but Raya is such like clearly one of the best players in Brentford to own. Like you might prefer to have Raya, and that we're getting into the weeds now on game week.
Yeah, and just when Ben joined the call just prior to the podcast, he apologized and said he was a bit flustered because he just had this news, and you have just watched a very, very rare thing, which is a Ben Crellin working something out in his head fixture-wise that you've just had right in front of our eyes, which is very rare. So well done, Ben. You've worked that out incredibly quickly, considering you've received the news like literally a couple of minutes before we went live. But yeah, just in terms, of the in terms of the FA Cup fixtures that have happened over the last week, and in terms of everything else we know, it looks like at least up until game week 30 or 31, this Brighton and Newcastle game has the potential to go in, but the lay of the land is a lot clearer now, isn't it? So just in kind of layman's terms, for me and for probably lots of our listeners, what are the things we should be thinking about now for the coming weeks?
Well, because the air's been taken out of the balloon, you could say, for game weeks 34, 37 and blank game week 32, it becomes more important to make points in these upcoming few blank game week 28 and doubles in 27 and 29. There, you kind of have to like go for them, because there won't be many points to gain as much as we thought in later on in the season. So that's why for a lot of people, wildcarding now seems like a good option. You can pick a wildcard team that sets you in good stead for the upcoming doubles and blanks, and you can then plot a path to game week 34 and 32 with like expecting Man United to blank in 32. And yeah, it makes wildcarding now a good option. I didn't want to wildcard this week. I took a -12 last week because I thought it would set me up for game week 28, game week 29. I was in good shape. I got Dom Solanke because he had a good fixture in 29, 28. But when Leicester won, I was like, when Leicester lost, sorry, I was like, I might have to wildcard. I don't really want to wildcard. But then last night's results just made it a really easy decision for me to wildcard. That's for me personally. But we can have a look at your team, Fergie, if you've got a difficult decision.
Yeah. I've got.
I mean, Ben, just before we look at Fergie's, can you see a scenario? Obviously, we've got 11 million teams out there. Can you see a scenario for a fantasy manager where they might not have to wildcard? Now, I know you've just summarised the opportunity that's there for the next few weeks, but we've always used this term team specific, but it is team specific. And if your team, to me, if your team has got Kane in it already, if you've got a Brighton and a Tony in your side already, and you don't have to transfer them in, then surely there's still a path you can maybe plot through and hang on to your chips. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, you look at game week 27. Can you get to maybe 4 or 5 Brighton and Brentford players, maybe 4, without using hits? And then you look at game week 28. It could be an option to play these 26 and 27. And then wildcard in game week 28, that could be an option. But if you're in good shape for 27 and 28, you could wildcard in game week 29. You can delay your wildcard and get more information if you've got a good enough team for the next few weeks as it is. But if you committed to Liverpool, for example, for their double game week, they've got quite a tricky fixture this week, and they've got a blank in game week 28. So it might make more sense to wildcard now if you've gone all in on Liverpool.
What's the weighing up wildcard in 26 against wildcard in 27, just for example? Is there any benefit in waiting that extra week, or do you just think that if you are stuck on Liverpool, many people have got Salah and Darwin, or Salah and Trent, or 3 or even more. They got they kind of went all in on the double, maybe Everton players, Tarkowski and all this stuff. Would you think that wildcard in 26 has that much of a significant benefit ahead of waiting a little bit?
No, it's just team dependent. You also get to save a free transfer in game week 27 if you wildcard in game week 26, and having more transfers to navigate those kind of transitions from 27 to 28 to 29. It might help out. But yeah, if you've got a good team for this week and you don't have too many Liverpool players, you maybe just got Salah or Alexander-Arnold.
I do think this is funny though. Liverpool probably, certainly the second best team in the last 4 or 5 years, and they've got a home game. In fact, they've got a fantastic game, it's worth mentioning, against Bournemouth, who they beat 9-0 earlier in the season. Everyone's forgotten that, but in game week 27. So, they've also kept 4 clean sheets in the last 5. And I think they've won 3 out of 4 games. They're not a whipping boy team. They're just not as good as they once were. So I'm just trying to give the other argument that if you have, like me and probably Ben, have gone all in on Liverpool, and you're sitting there with arguably their 3 best assets, Trent, Salah and Darwin, they could beat Man United this weekend. You know, it's not out of the question that they could score at home against them in probably what used to be the biggest game in the Premier League. So it's not like they're injured, is it? You know, do you see what I'm saying? It's like I'm just trying to say I'm not afraid to at least hold two of them going into that match. So I said, just that hasn't really made me think I've got to wildcard the Liverpool situation. Just want to discuss it really.
Yeah, there's loads of good fixtures in Game Week 27, aren't there, for the big expensive players. So you've got Rashford and Fernandes playing Southampton in Game Week 27. Maybe you wouldn't want Fernandes, but then you've got Kane playing Nottingham Forest at home. You can't really have Kane and Salah. Well, maybe you can, but like wildcarding does give you a very strong team in 27 as well. Yeah, I don't know. Are you either wildcarding this week or next week, Richard? Or
well, up until last night, I managed to get through Tuesday's fixtures, and obviously I was hoping for a Leeds win, like most people with triple Liverpool, but that didn't happen. I went into last night's games thinking I'm still going to hold out. I'm still going to hold on to my chips and go late. I don't, because I brought in Ollie Watkins for Mitrovic last week, and that sort of put me kind of up a player on for 28 on a lot of people, and I was just thinking, right, okay, I can get 8 out, in 28 already, 3 transfers between now and then, so buy 3 Brentford players, and then I've got 11 for 28, and I've sailed through it with some decent fixtures and a few doublers. I'll probably have to fade Brighton to do that, but still doable, and would send me into the last third with a wild card and free hit in pocket. So I was still in favour of doing that, but I think the content I've consumed today, plus the fact that Kane has a game and is obviously now a very good prospect himself, and the fact that really as you say, the volume of the biggest thing for me is the volume of fixtures in the last six game weeks is just. It's like, as you say, it's the air come out of the balloon. There isn't the opportunity there to really, I don't know, gain back the ground I'll likely lose if I don't wild card. I mean, I was sort of feeling the pressure a little bit. Holding out means it's like that kind of Game of Thrones meme, isn't it, with Jon Snow standing in front of the cavalry charging towards him. Just like you're just going to feel the whole world coming at you for the next 3 or 4 weeks if you don't wild card. So I feel like I'm being reluctantly towed into it. That's how I feel. Like you, I didn't really want to do it, but I feel like I've now got to do it just to stay in the game. That makes sense.
It does, yeah. I mean, you can quantify how much air came out of the balloon, because like going into this midweek's FA Cup, I think there was expected about 8 blanks in total between game week 28 and 32. So like 5 in slightly less than 5 and slightly less than 3 in 32. So a total of 8. But in reality, we're just going to get 5. So that's almost half, right? It's 3 fewer blanks and double game week fixtures that are going to be later on in the season. So yeah, I mean, strike while the iron's hot, like just attack what's in front of you now in 27, 29, and like 34, 37 should be easy enough to navigate. We can talk about that later, maybe. Just looking at the teams who could blank in game week 32 and have 2 double game weeks: Brighton, Man United, and Man City. They all will blank in game week 32, it looks like, and then have 2 doubles in 34 and 37. And the question is then, like, when do you free hit? Do you free hit in game week 32 and have a team full of Brighton and Man City, Man United players? Or do you delay it and free hit in a double game week? It's a bit of a difficult decision now. And you don't need to decide until game week 29, because you never know. Fulham could win away at Old Trafford in the FA Cup, and that would change the picture a bit. But yeah, that's the one like decision that we have to make for people who are wildcarding now. The key decision is when do you free hit?
Interesting. So the headline from Rich and Ben is attack these next 3 to 4 game weeks. This is kind of the make or break time for the season, almost a season definer. and the rest, as you say, is going to be a bit of a deflated balloon, which should be reasonably easy to navigate. So thank you so much, Ben and Rich, for going through that. I'm sure that has helped the thousands of people who are watching and are going to watch this back. It's going to be interesting to see how we go about attacking. Firstly,
can I ask one more question of you both, Rich, before we move on? How much of this do you think is Twitter bubble and the engaged managers who watch this show and other FPL content, versus the macro level, the hundreds of thousands of people in the top 250k who maybe will wildcard when they're ready, and they'll just carry on playing with their Arsenal and their City and their players from good teams. I mean, how do you think this is going to be? Say in the top 100k, 70, 80,000 wildcards this week. Do you think it's going to be that big, or do you think it's actually going to be way smaller than we think it is? Because it's almost like everyone in the content creator world seems to be wildcarding. That's to me what it feels.
It does seem like that. But a couple of days ago on Monday and Tuesday, people were talking about wildcarding in game week 26, and I was like, wait a bit. I don't think we need to do. I don't think we all need to wildcard in game week 26. But then the cup results just made it an obvious move, and maybe people will get swept up in the Twitter bubble, but I think people who aren't aware of the schedule maybe don't see the advantage to wildcarding now if they're not aware of the future blank and double game weeks. But for managers who are aware of what's coming, then it does make sense in most cases to wildcard now if you haven't got a good team for 27 and 28.
I think as well, though, on social media, I'm trying to think what I would tweet. If I was wildcarding, I would probably tweet, I am wildcarding. If I wasn't wildcarding, I probably wouldn't tweet, I'm not wildcarding. If that makes sense. Exactly. It's people who are wildcarding are saying I'm wildcarding, but that's what our feeds are made up of, right? You haven't got a bunch of people saying I'm not. So I do think there'll be a bubble. I do think there'll be lots of wildcards played, but we see it time and time again. It's never as much as we think. We think it's going to be 80% of the game, and it's probably be about 5% or something, which it tends to be. But that's all good for the engaged managers who want to wildcard, because if that's where you guys feel the edges, you go ahead and do it. And I know last year there was Salah had a triple opportunity, didn't he, in 26, but there was also that last minute wildcard opportunity in 26, and the community very much split between triple captain in Salah in 26 or wildcard and set them a bench boost for 28, if you remember. They were holding Arsenal assets through, and but again, in terms of overall numbers, it wasn't everyone, right? But it looks to be a big upside opportunity, which is what fantasy football and FPL is all about, right? It's looking for those big upside opportunities to try and jump on. So it's going to be really interesting. Haven't had a chance yet to read through a couple of messages. I'll even say hello to the chat, but thank you so much to everyone who's joined us. Packed lobby as usual. Big A is in the chat. Chef AB, Kaiser Sose, Steen, FPL Nim, Chef AB, FPL River, FPL Sparta, and so many more. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And just a reminder, our My Team feature that shares your personalised recommended transfers every week specifically for your team using artificial intelligence is now live on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, and it's free for 7 days for all to use. Give it a go. Ben's transfer planner is also available on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, and if you didn't see last night, live points and live rank is also now available on the app and website as well. So go to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, link is below. We also have a Discord server. If you haven't seen it, link is below. Come in and chat everything with everyone from the hub. Fantasy football, that is absolutely free. Looking at some players then for the coming weeks, not specifically wildcard players yet. We'll look at wildcard specific players next, but looking at the best players for the coming weeks in general, we've got predicted points up from fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, and top of the shop for the next 4 game weeks. This is between game weeks 26 and 29. Ivan Toney comes up top, 32.8. Just in terms of his ban, everything's pure speculation at this point. But the latest thing which is, seems to be the best source so far, is that he'll probably play a few more games before he gets a hearing, and after that we don't know. But even that is incredibly woolly, right? We don't know. But at the moment, he is top of the predicted points for the whole of FPL for the next 4 game weeks. Obviously, he has 2 double game weeks in that, which is why he's so high up. Harry Kane is second, 32.7. Interestingly, João Felix is third, 26.9. Mitoma, 25. Rashford, 24. Odegaard, 23. Saka, 23. Maddison, 23, who is now returning from illness. Watkins, Mbomo, Barnes, March, Johnson. There's no Haaland in this top 20. Obviously, blanks in 28 and no doubles as well. Yeah. So I suppose a couple of questions first. In terms of Haaland, who I believe, if my memory serves, goes home to Newcastle, blank away to Palace.
Other way around.
Apologies. Is Haaland a potential? Is he a must-have on wildcard or not? Ben, what do you think?
No, it's optional. You're going to want him eventually. You're going to want him in 30 and 31 looking ahead, because he's captainable then when he plays Southampton away, Leicester away. So if you start without him, you'd want to have a plan to get him pretty soon. I think I'm currently going to go with him and then downgrade him in game week 28 with my free transfers, and then use that money to upgrade Odegaard to Fernandes in 29. But yeah, I mean, it's optional if you're wildcarding now. It depends on your budget.
What are your thoughts, Rich, on Haaland? Would you consider not going with him?
Yeah, I don't think it's essential. I think I will. If I do wildcard, I will probably keep him just because of the tied up value, and it's just really the blank game week that we're looking to negotiate with him. And as we get nearer the season, the accrued value becomes less of an issue. But you still got to pay whatever it is, 12.3 to get him back and find that in a week where you might want double game week players, or you might be preparing to negotiate another blank or whatever. So it's not ideal to have stored up transfers in your plan. However, it's perfectly feasible to go with a Watkins, Toney, Kane setup on a wild card, for instance, instead of Haaland. Probably the 2 mid-price forwards would be Watkins and Toney to get, just because it helps so much with game week 28. I like Kane as well, obviously, but you can't have all 4 of them, so you've got to leave one of them out. So at the moment, I think, though, to answer your question, I think Haaland probably stays in my team.
Okay. Wildcard aside at the moment, gents, I say, we'll look specifically at wildcard next. Who are the kind of key players who you would encourage FPL managers to be targeting for the coming weeks? Who are your top, 4 or 5 players you're saying you simply have to have this player? Ben, do any spring to mind?
Well, Brentford are good, aren't they? Have we said Ivan Toney, Raya, or a Brentford defender? Brighton, it depends what kind of shape you are in for 28, but you do want at least two Brighton players for their double game week in 27, don't you? So the midfielders look best. If you're going to triple up, you'd rather have 2 of their midfielders and 1 of the defender and goalkeeper than the other way around, because it's a De Zerbi team and he kind of likes to attack. So yeah, I would go for the cheap Brighton midfielders.
Superb. And how about you, Rich? Anyone leap out at you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I like Mitoma. I know the stats point to March over Mitoma, but he just looks the more exciting player to own. And I think I'd probably go for him over the 2 if I was having to. But I'll probably have them both because they're so cheap. They're like 5.3 and 5.1 million. So, but the bigger question is it takes up 2 spots. So if most people are going in maybe with 2 Arsenal players and a Rashford, in their current teams, then there's not many spots available, to fill up. But those would be the two. There's a lot of talk about McAllister playing in a number 10 role. He's the one who's on penalties. However, in recent weeks, he still hasn't scored any points, so and could be put back into a more defensive midfield position. So I think for me, to rank them, I'd probably go Mitoma, March, McAllister, but there may be other thoughts on that order. I agree with Ben. I think 2 Brighton mids and 1 defender, including the possible keeper, over the other way around. And with Brentford, it's the other way around. I'd probably say 2 defenders and Ivan Toney would be the ways to go, just covering those teams.
Incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. So you two guys sound like you're on wildcard, and FPL Matthew from Fantasy Football Hub has very, very kindly drawn up his wildcard shortlist, which is absolutely superb. I'm assuming he'll be tweeting this out as well, but just to run through it for those listening on the podcast versions. From Brighton, he likes Dunk at 4.7 and Estupinan at 4.7 as well. I like Estupinan, I got to be honest. He's always seems to be kind of there or thereabouts from attacking. Well, I think he had a knock, but hopefully he'll be back soon. And obviously midfielders, Mitoma, March and McAllister. He doesn't particularly like Sanchez and doesn't really like any of the Brighton forwards. Obviously Evan Ferguson, I think he's 4.5 or 4.6, but he could be an option if you think he's going to play. And obviously because of his price as well, he is able elsewhere. From Chelsea, Kepa 4.7, Reece James 5.8. Matthew doesn't fancy anyone else from the Chelsea team, even though Felix does appear on our very, very high actually on the predicted points. They just can't score goals. His XG is actually pretty decent. I'm sure I saw a stat this week that I can't believe it's right. It probably is, but it's something like Man United have scored 50 goals since 6th of November or something, and Chelsea have scored 6. That just can't be right.
I think we are. I think we are the lowest scoring team in the league.
That just sounds unbelievable, though. If that's true,
600 million quid on players.
100 million a goal, then. Yeah. Value. For Arsenal, he likes Gabriel at 5.2, Zinchenko 5.1. Zinchenko looks to me to be, turned into, as we expect, a real key player for there. I did have concerns about his expected minutes, but he looks to be such an important player in that team. And obviously the 3 mid, Saka, Odegaard and Martinelli back on the menu after we all took him out. Looks like they've changed their team around a little bit. I went for Nketiah thinking, get the number 9 up front. But looks like Martinelli definitely back on the menu. Brentford, Raya in goals, Ben Mee in defence. So you mentioned about potentially having, Raya and a defender. So Mee at 5 million and Toney up front. Newcastle, Nick Pope in goals, Trippier, Shah and Botman. Nothing from the attack. Aston Villa, Ollie Watkins, 7.3. Tottenham, Harry Kane, 11.7. Leicester, Maddison, 8.1, who is back now. Man United, Rashford, and Man City, Haaland. So that is Matthew's shortlist there. In terms, I'm sure you two guys have had some thoughts around some kind of wild card draft. Are there any names on there, what's obviously immediately stand out to you at must-haves, and and probably more importantly, is there anyone on there? Is there anyone who isn't on there who you think? Rich, have you had any early thoughts on that?
No, I think Matthew's covered most of the key options. I think there may be some of the cheaper Brentford defenders are worth mentioning. So Rico Henry, I think, is 4.5. So if you don't want to spend the money for Ben Mee, it might be sensible. But I think when you find your wild card, you probably find you've got a few million left over, because these players are from Brentford and Brighton are not expensive, so you're not going with a threemium here. There's no De Bruyne, there's no Salah in wild card draft. So basically, I think you're talking about having money left over, which you will probably need come game week 28 and 29 when you start upgrading to premium players. So at that point, you might find you wouldn't want to be 0.1 short on Bruno Fernandes, for instance, for game week 29, if you if you bought Ben Mee over Rico Henry. So some of those cheaper options might come into it. But I think Matthew's got got most of the things. In fact, I don't think Man United are on there. He hasn't got Bruno Fernandes on there, but I think it's reasonable to put Bruno Fernandes straight back in on a wild card. I know he blanks in game week 28, but I've seen quite a few drafts this week with Bruno in them, and he's on such decent form that actually, you can save yourself a transfer down the line as long as you realise you've got those 3 bench spots in game week 28 have to be navigated, and you may be sacrificing a Brentford or a Brighton player to fit him in.
Good stuff. How about you, Ben? Have you got your eye on outside of that list?
I think I agree with all of that. There's no one who isn't on there that I'm considering. I'm not sure about Martinelli. He's in good form now, but what happens when Jesus comes back? He'll go up front, won't he? And then will Trossard go back to rotating with Martinelli? Will Martinelli keep Trossard out? I'm not sure about that long term. But yeah, I think I agree with all that's on there. It's just, if you're wildcarding, how do you plan for game week 28 is the question.
Yeah, I'd probably add Sanchez to the list as a Brighton keeper, because there are arguments to suggest, obviously, because of this navigating game week 28. If you have Sanchez instead of Raya, you don't have 3 Brighton outfield players to have to manage, which allows you to take an extra outfield player like Rashford, who you don't really want to sell, through game week 28. So that sort of saves one of those spots and gives you an extra player in game week 28. So that's a nice way you can do it. Yes, okay, you could say, well, Sanchez isn't as good a keeper as Raya, but Brighton have got 5 double game weeks. I mean, that's a lot of double game weeks you're getting for having that keeper. And so, to be honest, I think Sanchez warrants being on the list at least.
Yeah, looking at Matthew's article online on the Hub website, he does have a different list that includes Sanchez and includes Henry and Pinnock. And
he may have updated it a bit more since I took this. Yeah, there's been a few shouts in the chat for Pinnock, who I believe is 4.5 as well, and who's absolutely nailed.
So he's the other one as well as Henry. Yeah.
What are the other? So on a wild card, what are the other decision points? You mentioned just then, Ben, around having to think about 28. So other than the keeper, which you already mentioned, what are the other decision points in your wild card team that you are you kind of thinking about in terms of navigating the 28?
Well, yeah, we've talked about Haaland or no Haaland to begin with.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do you do in game week 28 and 29? I think if you start with Haaland, then it's an obvious decision to sell him in game week 28 and to get someone like Watkins who plays in 28 and doubles in 29. And then, do you want a bench boost with two single game week players, or 3 or 4, or how many Arsenal players do you keep? Do you move on from Gabriel and Odegaard in game week 29, or do you keep one of them? Tony's a bit of an issue. If he gets a yellow card soon and he's on 9 yellow cards going into double game week 29, for example, because it's a tough double game week, you might sell him just because if he were to get booked in the first one, he'd miss the second one, and there's some thoughts about that. But with game week 29, the game week 32 blanks will be decided before the game week 29 deadline, and then you can make a decision on when you're free hitting, and that will affect who you're transferring out and who you're transferring in. With hopefully you'll have 2 free transfers in game week 29, and then you can make a more informed decision on what you're doing.
Superb. Thank you, gents. Really good stuff. We've got the Game Week 26 wildcard team courtesy of the Fantasy Football Hub algorithm. And it reads, in goals, it's got Sanchez and Raya. It has Zinchenko, Reece James and Rico Henry. And it also has Veltman and Trippier as the back 5. In midfield, Odegaard, Saka, Rashford, Harvey Barnes, interestingly, which haven't mentioned yet, just a downgrade probably on Maddison, and Mitoma. And then up front, Kane, Tony, and the algorithm prefers João Felix, probably because of their next 3 fixtures for Chelsea. They're really good. Home to Leeds, away to Leicester, home to Everton. So that's what it was. So it's probably not too far from what we said. Probably Watkins over Felix from what you guys are saying. And maybe not Barnes. Maybe go. I know they've gone for. It's gone for Sanchez and two. You probably wouldn't go for Sanchez and Raya, I'm assuming, even though you could.
Well, some people are talking about bench boosting in game week 27, which is a bit of a different strategy. And then the algorithm is obviously considering bench boosting in 27 if it's getting Raya and Sanchez. But yeah,
interesting stuff there.
It always throws up a few interesting ones to consider, though, doesn't it? The algorithm team. It's you're probably the name. Maddison's probably not got high expected minutes at the moment because of all his illnesses and injuries, but Maddison as a move in game week 28 is a decent maneuver, because he's then got a nice, he's got a decent fixture against Brentford and then a nice double. So he'd probably be the Leicester mid I'd go for over Harvey Barnes, but. Yeah, interesting.
This is why I like the algorithm because it does throw up things that just even if you don't want to go for the specific player they've mentioned, it makes you think, just that Felix one again for me. It just makes you look at the fixtures and realise Leeds, Leicester, and Everton. Offensively, I know that Chelsea not scoring a lot of goals, but it's pretty good and he's a differential. So I quite like that. Briefly back to game week 26. Look at our captain for this game week. So we've chatted wildcard, we've chatted best players. The captain is a really interesting one this week because we've got on the predicted points on the hub for this week: Kane 7.1, Odegaard 7, Saka 6.9, Haaland 5.9. Obviously up against a really tough Newcastle defence. Tony 5.9, Martinelli 5.8, Salah 5.7. Felix 5.6, Rashford 5.4, etc. In terms of the poll on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, I think this is the first time, maybe even since game week 1 or even this season, where Haaland in a single game week hasn't been the default captain option. So 48% of the vote has gone for Bukayo Saka at home to Bournemouth, which looks a pretty good fixture at the moment. Haaland is second with 29% of the vote onto Newcastle. Kane with 9%. But in terms of captaincy this week, interesting one, I think, gents. Maybe not as straightforward as it has been. Ben, who are you thinking of captaining in game week 26?
I hadn't even started thinking about that yet because I've been too busy with wildcards. And I'm going to leave that till last. But Saka, I think I might go with Saka. I'll have a choice. I'll have Kane and Haaland in my team, I think. So I'll have 3 people to choose from. Yeah, I think I probably would go with Saka.
Rich, who would yours be on at the moment?
I think it's bust on Haaland. I like Ben. I've given it absolutely no thought because I don't even know who's going to be in my team. If I'm going to wildcard. I think Haaland at a home game, even though it's a Newcastle. I mean, Newcastle have done me well. I've got a couple of their defenders, but this isn't really the week to own them. And they've just come off the peak a little bit, haven't they? Losing a couple of games and conceding in the last 2 or 3 matches. So I think City at home are still a bit of a banker of a unit for the captaincy. So I'll probably keep it on Haaland, although having, like many people, just lost out to the Saka variants this weekend. Thank God for that late Salah goal last night. Otherwise, it was looking like a big wound.
FPL Focal in the chat has just made a really good point just around wildcard potentially in 26 when we wouldn't bench. If you were planning a bench boost in 29, it's nearly a month away with an international break in between. Just before we kind of wrap up the wildcard chat, is that something which would concern either of you? Ben, have you considered that?
Well, that was in my plans before. I was considering that when it looked like saving the wild card for game week 30 was a better option. I was thinking, I'll be able to react to the international break. I suppose I'll look to have 2 free transfers in game week 29, and I can react to injuries and with those 2 free transfers.
Okay, fair. Rich, does it play a massive part in your thinking, or do you just think you have to ride your luck a little bit?
I think the key thing is it's obviously tempting to set up a team with a view to bench boosting in 29, and if your wild card's going to go that way, then with almost a month to go, or about a month to go before those games are actually played, and clearly quite a lot can change in that time in terms of players getting injured or players falling out of favour, etc., from teams. So it may not look, in Tony's case, he might not, might be banned from one of two sources. So you ideally you should always set up with a wild card to bench boost pretty soon afterwards. And I can remember a scenario 2 or 3 seasons ago when I think we had a first wild card we could have used up to game week 16. And there was a bench boost opportunity 3 weeks later in game week 19, which a lot of us who held their wild card did exactly that. They put a wild card in play to set up for a game week 19 bench boost. And by the time it got to game week 19, we'd had various COVID postponements. We'd had some snow, and we'd had a number of teams had their fixtures removed from the game week 19 schedule to be replaced by teams that you remember that, don't you, Ben? Weren't even on the radar at that point. And so you're sitting there having played your wild card to a completely different schedule. No, I'm not saying that's going to happen again to the same extent, but you never know. I mean, it's still pretty cold here.
Who was the West Brom keeper at the time? Adam wildcarded in 2 keepers and bench boosted. And who was the West Brom keeper?
It was Ramsdale, wasn't it? Was it Ramsdale?
No, I can't think it was for West Brom. But he basically wildcarded in Meslier from Leeds and a West Brom keeper. I want to say Johnston. I can't remember anyway.
Yeah, Sam Johnson.
Both of them were ruled out with COVID on a bench boost for Adam, which was, you can laugh about it now, but at the time it was awful. And the Leeds game, I think, or the West Brom game was the early kickoff. I bench boosted as well, and I had Johnson. So you go from this, when you bench boost and it's like 11 o'clock, half 11, you're waiting for the early, the lineups. You just have this, this sort of game week 1 excitement and euphoria, don't you? Come on, here we go. Just to see that one of your keepers who you just brought in from -4, for example, has just gone down with COVID and won't play either game in a double game week. Absolute killer.
Well, it's only you lose one player, don't you? And your bench was pretty much wrecked or pretty much nullified.
I'm sure Adam lost both his keepers.
No, exactly. You used 2 or 3. I mean, it's just might as well just not giving it away, So yeah, bench boost, it has to be a bit of a question mark. You go into it optimistically, but you can always keep it, can't you, for 34 or 37? If it doesn't work out.
I think just to finish off the captain, I think I'll be going for Saka. He just looked absolutely on fire. That fixture looks absolutely superb at home at the Emirates. Haaland against Newcastle. City just being, probably fair to say, slightly off it. And Newcastle incredibly tight. So Saka for me as well, I think looks a superb option. Fergie is a punt for game week 26. Interested. Well, this week I've just gone for a player. It's quite hard to go for someone without trying to be too different for different sake. But I've gone for a player this week. I've just gone for him because I think this player looks back in form, and comments from the manager suggests he's going to be playing. This is just a 1 week punt, and this week I have gone for Phil Foden, who looks to be back on it. He's played superb in his last couple of games, and I think that if you're just looking, if you're dead ending potentially this week, then Phil Foden looks like he could be a person who could bring in the points this week. So that would be my punt for this week. And let's just have a look at our team. So Ben and Rich haven't had chance to kind of build wildcard teams yet because of everything that has been going on. But Ben, it sounds like you've fairly recently decided to wildcard. What would the very, very rough shape of your wildcard look like at the moment?
Okay. What is it? It's Trippier, James, Gabriel, Dunk, and me in defence. I think I'll have Kepa and Raya in goal. Saka is definitely in there. Rashford's in there. Odegaard. I think I'm going McAllister and Mitoma, but that's the 5-man midfield. I don't know which 2 Brighton midfielders I'll get, but it'll be Saka, Rashford, Odegaard, and 2 Brighton mids. And then the forwards, Haaland, Kane, and Tony. And I might like change a draft and have Watkins instead of Haaland. But yeah, the midfield and forwards are settled. But it's the goalkeeper conundrum, and like, do I go with Sanchez instead of Raya, and then have like Pinnock instead of Dunk or something like that? But yeah, that's what I'm thinking about now.
Good stuff. Sounds like a good draft there, Ben. Rich, what is your, and I know even before you came on this stream, you hadn't decided whether to wild card or not. So
No.
This is very ad lib and off the cuff. But what's your thinking?
Yeah. Well, my thinking, if I don't wildcard, and it's still, I've seen a lot of people say they're 90% going to wildcard. I don't think I'm that far. I think I'm going to look at every rationale and reason to not, even though I'm, taking on the formidable force of everyone else coming at me. I might stick with Liverpool just to give them that Bournemouth game. And try and leave the wild card till later, and I think in which case I'd probably just save a transfer and go with the team I have. So that means playing Darwin against United. It means playing Salah and Trent against United. No problem playing that. Yeah. I've got Watkins against Crystal Palace in the side. Bueno is a bit of a fringe player anyway, but I think to me that's almost like that was my 8th player for game week 28. And I think if he's got a hamstring, I can't rely on him even to just turn up and get a couple of points. So that puts me down to 7. I think that could swing it. I was saying 6.5 if you've got a real edge piece like that is probably the benchmark to think I'd better wildcard. If you've got less players than that in game week 28, then I think that pretty much makes a decision for you. But if you've got 8 and you can theoretically get through, because a lot of wildcarders will still struggle to get through game week 28. If they go too heavy on the first 2 weeks, they're going to go in with 9 or 10 players for game week 28, and they're still going to have to make transfers that week and possibly take hits to get through the week. So it's not an easy game week to get through for wildcarders who are playing the doubles. So I might not do it, in which case, if I was going to make a transfer this week, I'd lose Darwin for Tony, because he's kind of going to be everyone's captain next week, I think, if he doesn't get suspended. And I'd probably bring Tony in for Darwin if I was making a transfer, but I'd probably just save it and carry that transfer through.
Good stuff, Rich. Rich the save. We're going to call you Rich from now on. You love saving the transfer. My team looks incredibly different from your guys, obviously, because I free hit, and I gotta be honest, I haven't given a lot of thought yet, because I was waiting for this pod. But you've certainly put a couple of ideas in my head, Ben. So I've got Kepa and Ward, so I'll probably play Kepa home to Leeds this week. I've got White, Trippier, Shaw. I've also got Botman and Patterson. So just quickly looking at that, happy with White, happy with Trippier. Shaw may or may not be injured. Got Botman.
Yeah, was that more of a rest than it? Was that more of a rest than an injury? I
think he had a knock on the weekend, so he has been flagged. So I'm not 100% sure, but I would have to play Botman away to Man City, which I'm not overly enamoured with. Midfield, Mahrez home to Newcastle could be a differential there. Saka, Bruno I've still got, and Rashford, and I've got Andreas for the bench at the moment, and then the front 3 of Kane, Haaland, and Nketiah. So, like I say, I haven't given it a tremendous lot of thought yet. I'd be really interested actually in Ben's thoughts on this sort of team, which was the template a game week or 2 ago. But my current thinking is to probably do something like, if Nketiah looks like he's going to be out, to Nketiah to Tony, maybe play the rest. Then I'm quite happy with that. I'm quite excited to have Bruno and Rashford and Shaw home to Southampton. I think they play in 27, which I think could be a very profitable week. I also think that they could do pretty well actually at Anfield this week, because even though Liverpool have improved, United to me at the moment. They're just playing a bit of a different level from most of the rest of the league. Go through 26 and 27, and just judging on what Ben mentioned earlier, I think I could potentially look to wildcard in 28 because I would struggle for 28, and look to bench boost in 29 is a very fleeting thought. I'm very interested in Ben's thoughts on this.
So you're kind of underpowered for game week 27 at the minute, aren't you?
Yeah,
So
so if I brought in Tony this week, for example, I'm happy to take a hit to get a couple of players in next week, or I could wildcard in 27, or I could wildcard this week. There's no things not wildcarding this week, but because I've got Bruno and Kane and all this stuff, it just seems a bit of a shame to wildcard more than anything.
yeah, you could wildcard next week as well. Is an option if you want to. I don't know. You've got Nketiah and Patterson.
Yeah,
you want good long term. Yeah, and Andreas, you don't really want him. So do you think you'll wildcard in either 27 or 28, or do you think you might even save it until like 29, 30?
I was thinking of 28, but I think I'm trying to get away from the fact that because I free hit, I'm trying to get away from the fact that I shouldn't now wildcard in 26, so I can feel the full benefit of the free hit, which was keeping Kane and Bruno. So it's a kind of
it's a recency bias.
It's recency bias
affecting you'll also be spaffed out on your chips if you use your wild card this week, won't you? You will literally be.
Well, I'll have the bench. I'll have the bench, same as everyone else. But it's just for what Ben said earlier about these next 3 or 4 game weeks are just going to be. It sounds like basically season defining, right? There's just going to be so many, like similar to last year, like 28. That whole period between 26 and 29 defined seasons one way or another.
It did.
And it was massive. It was massive. So I don't want to miss out. But on the same note, I don't want to duck out of saying that actually my free hit was a bit of a waste. So it's probably a pride thing there. But Ben, if you had my team, what would you do?
Oh, what would I do?
That doesn't sound good.
You've got one.
I jump in the river.
Free transfer. It's a difficult decision. Like at least you won't have a headache in game week 27. Like a lot of us will have a benching headache in game week 27 because we'll have so many good players. We'll have to bench like Gabriel. If we're wildcarding this week, we'll have to bench some really good fixtures in 27. At least you'd be able to bench your Patterson, and Nketiah if you keep him, and those kind of players. I'd have to sit down and look at a transfer plan with your team, but keeping it for 28 could be an option for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Because you've got Kane, and he's an important player to have.
Rich, yeah. So, wild card or not?
You is the Nketiah knock a new knock, or is that?
I'm not even sure he's going to play. Though is the problem. I don't think he's even going to play. This is the problem.
He's not. Jesus is going to be back soon. He gets rotated, so he's probably an off, isn't he? Patterson's deadwood. Andreas is now needs to be moved on because they don't double or they blank and stuff. So, yeah, I'd wildcard it, mate. I would,
Ron,
and I've seen in the chat people are saying I should wildcard, and that is helpful because I'm sometimes quite slow to see it, in these periods. But I do remember this is exactly the same numbers on the game weeks. That's what's so spooky.
Exactly.
26 onwards, that's when we all triple captain Salah and it all started, and loads wildcarded that week instead, didn't they? And it's all the same. I remember you then wildcarded game week 28, and those that brought in Reece James, that's when he banged like 26 points in a week, wasn't it, or something? And
there's a couple of other players. I think it was like Maddison and Saka wasn't very popular, but those who had wildcarded early smashed 28, exactly. And we were left in their wake, wasn't we? So
I was on the wrong side of it, and that's scary.
Ron in the chat has just said my worst nightmare. Fergie, he says, if you wildcard this game week, then I change my vote to Spaff. See, it's things like that which shouldn't hinder my decision making. Competition time for our YouTube watchers. If you want to win a fantastic Fantasy Football Hub mug, which is over Rich's shoulder. Please make sure you like the stream. Please make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and put who you think is going to be the top FPL point scorer in game week 26. Ben, as the guest, who do you think is going to be the top point scorer in game week 26? You can't go for Saka, Kane, or Haaland.
I'll go for Odegaard.
Good shout. Rich, yourself?
Darwin,
okay. Darwin, yeah.
Finally.
Bias.
Finally. When we don't own him anymore.
Do you know, we're getting some of the last season's game week 28 players in. I don't know if you remember this. Matty Cash, 29-pointer. James Harden says Coutinho. Do you remember Coutinho? Loads of people brought in.
God.
And I was like, no, I'll stick with Jacob Ramsey. He'll do me for the next week or two. And Coutinho like banged in 2 goals and an assist or something, and it just absolutely wiped us out, didn't it? It really hurt. So yeah, this is a key 24 hours, Rich.
It is.
I haven't had a chance yet to look if there was a mug winner from last week, but I most certainly will do ahead of next week. No fear there. And that is it for us for this week. Well, what an absolutely magnificent episode, I must say. It's very rare that we get to hear such, brilliance and such insight as things are whirring around in his mind, from Ben. So it's really, really appreciated, Ben, to to have you on. I'm sure that I'm sure this podcast and your wise words will definitely influence the FPL community and hopefully help their seasons, hopefully help them win their mini leagues, which is what we do at Fantasy Football Hub. Ben, where can people find you?
I'm at Ben Crellin on Twitter, CRELLIN. And yeah, I'll be tweeting about the double game weeks. I'll update my my spreadsheets with the latest information I've just received soon. And yeah, thanks for having me. It's been good.
Superb. And don't forget, you can get Ben's very own transfer planner, fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. The link is in the description below, where Ben will give you a copy of his planner and help you navigate through in the most optimal way. Rich, thank you so much. I know I've been waxing lyrical, obviously, about Ben Rich all the way through, but absolutely ably supported, tremendous insight as usual. Really, really great stuff, Rich. Where can people find you?
I'm at Rich Clarke FPL on Twitter as well.
And don't forget, you can get Rich's exclusive team reveal. So Rich will reveal in his article, his weekly article, Fantasy Football Hub. He reveals his team every single week for Fantasy Football Hub members. If he does wildcard, he will share his actual wildcard team, and if he doesn't, he will show his transfer. So don't forget to do that as well. Just for those asking about Adam in the chat, he is still with us. He's fine. He has just had an incredibly couple of busy weeks in work. He assures us that he should be back next week, which will be absolutely superb. And thanks to all you lots in the chat. Absolutely amazing this evening. Thank you so much for all the engagement and interaction. Thanks to those who are going to watch it back and those listening to the podcast versions. Your support is very, very much appreciated. Just a reminder, our My Team feature that shares your personalized recommended transfers every week for your team using artificial intelligence is now live on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk and is free for 7 days along with Ben's planner. We also have a Discord server link below. Come in and chat everything fantasy football. That is absolutely free. My Twitter handle is at FFH_Fergi, and this podcast and video will be in the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you like what you watch, please press the like button. Remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast. Drop us 5 stars on iTunes and leave a comment. We'll be back next week as we look ahead to double game week 27, and we will have Adam back hopefully next week. In the meantime, the very best of luck for game week 26. Enjoy that wildcard planning if you're activating, and may all your arrows be green. Good night all.